Welcome into another episode of the Father, Son, and the Holy Buckeye podcast. I'm Sean. With me, as always, is the Father himself, Rob Simzak. We're back after a little bit of a hiatus. Dad, I am in the middle of some smoke. The Oregon fires, barely able to breathe. So the middle of the summer's really hitting hard out here. How are you doing?
Hope you can still breathe because I did read today that Portland, Oregon had the worst air quality in the world, bar none. So I hope you're all right. I am pretty good myself. I have a far more bit of institutional control and things to do than my good fat friend Warde Manuel.
And it all comes back to Warde Manuel.
It
Uh,
always does.
Great.
He's
Well, I
the
mean,
gift, the fat man that keeps giving.
thank you, Ward. And we still got like 4 more months of him too until he's gone. So I'm sure he'll have some more
Enjoy this,
shenanigans.
dear. Enjoy this, dear listeners. I have never smiled so wildly in my life.
All right, let's jump in today's episode because we got a lot of stuff to roll through. We're going to start off today with some college football playoff hot takes. I'm sure later this month, as we start to delve into the 2026 season, we will give you our official predictions for the season. But we're going to just dip our toes in the water today and give some hot takes, who we think might make the playoff, go on a run, who we favorites that might miss it. So I got four things I wanted to run through, and we can probably just alternate. Did you want to start us off, Dad?
You start us off. Age before beauty.
There
I
we
don't.
go.
I don't think that quite works in this
I think you
scenario.
got it mixed up.
Never.
That's okay.
Never.
Okay. Well, I'll start off. My first college football playoff hot take for the 2026 season. I think Ole Miss is going to go farther in the college football playoff than any other SEC team.
You like them, and the powder blues must have rubbed off on you or something.
I do. I mean,
I
am I taking that as some disagreement on your end?
I I look at the SEC, and I'm probably already blowing up the episode. I see Georgia, and I see a whole lot of meh.
I mean, that's fair. I mean, I don't necessarily disagree with you, but also I can't ignore how Georgia's performed in the playoff the past couple seasons. Here's my theory behind Ole Miss. I mean, first of all, their offense is going to be scary. They got Kewan Lacey back at running back. He's arguably the best running back in the SEC, and he's also joined by Mekhi Frazier, who had over 500 yards at Michigan State last year, and Joshua Dye. And he's a name to know because he had 1,800 yards and 28 touchdowns at over 6 yards per carry last year at Southern Utah. It is in the FCS, so that's a big jump he's making, but in some cases, I don't think the numbers can lie. And then at receiver, they returned Deuce Alexander, who had almost 700 yards last year, and they brought in a litany of transfers, like 5 different guys with a lot of different skill sets and power four starting experience. So they got depth at receiver. Their offensive line is revamped and is definitely their biggest question mark, but that's not as much of a concern for me when you have someone like Trinidad Chambliss who can run around and make plays outside the pocket and just the raw talent they have at running back. And their offensive line also wasn't very good last year, so maybe that churn they have in that room actually might be for the best. Get some new faces in there. Their defense is completely overhauled via the portal. They have defensive tackle Will Eccles and linebacker Suntarine Perkins. They're kind of their top two returners. They're two of the best in at their position in the SEC, but most of their defensive line and most of their defensive backroom has been overhauled via the portal, so we really won't know how good their defense is until the season starts. But also, they made it to the semifinals last year with an average defense, so I'm not too concerned about that if their offense is as good as I think it can be. And then looking at their schedule, they open up with Louisville, and that's not an easy win. And I am putting them officially on upset watch week one. But if they make it through that season opener against Louisville, they get LSU at home. And then the only other game they might be an underdog in before November is a road trip to Texas. And then they have Georgia at home and a road trip to Oklahoma to start November before a really easy finish. So that's really only 4 games where they're not going to be the clear favorites in. And I think if they make it to November with one loss, which is, I would think, probably the likeliest scenario, all they have to do is split Georgia and Oklahoma to make it into the college football playoff at 10-2. And again, like they have a veteran quarterback who can make plays outside the pocket. I've talked at length how much I love Trinidad Chambliss, and they have a coach now who has experience calling plays in the college football playoff. So I just think if there's a team that can make a spark and go on a run, and an SEC team that can actually win a playoff game, I think it's Ole Miss.
Well argued, well reasoned. I can't refute much of it. I am not as high as Trinidad Chambliss as you, but I was pulling up his stats and he only threw 3 interceptions last year. And I looked at their schedule while you were speaking. I think that first game, good chance they were starting the season 0-1. Very good chance because Brome plays really well in big games. He gets his team ready. It's some of the other games you got to worry about with his squad. But the SEC, to me, the entire conference outside of Georgia, it may be the greatest conference ever birthed this year. It could be. I just see a lot of teams. We haven't played one game. I see a lot of teams that I don't feel good about. If I'm an SEC fan, I mean, not they're not garbage.
Yeah, a
Texas
lot
isn't
of good
garbage.
teams with, name brands, who SEC fans are going to say are top 15 teams. But exactly to your point, if you look a little bit deeper, every team outside of Georgia does have glaring weaknesses, and it's really hard to picture any team in the SEC outside of Georgia actually winning a national championship.
Yeah, and if you change the logos and the spelling of the program's name, like there are a bunch of Illinois and Washingtons and USCs. I mean, that's what they are. To me, they just until they prove it, and proving it doesn't mean beating up on each other. That doesn't prove it to me because anybody who's watched, I don't want to use the stupid phrase "eye test." I hate that. It's jargon for people who haven't watched a lot of football and can't explain, lack the vocabulary and intelligence to explain what they're seeing. But anybody that's watched SEC games in the last few years, you know what you're seeing. These teams aren't great. They haven't been great. A couple of years ago, I would have said it's the quarterback. CJ Stroud was better than anybody in the SEC, or Will Howard was better than anybody in the SEC because he was. Alabama's ranked. Who's going to be their quarterback? Is it going to be an 18-year-old freshman?
Yeah, probably.
I mean, okay, good luck with that. So,
Yeah. I mean,
I
and
mean,
even, the veteran quarterbacks they have aren't, I think the
I like
slam
Gunner
dunks.
Stein, I like Gunner Stockton as a dude, as a player. I just don't know if you can shut down their running game. Can he make enough plays with his arm in the fourth quarter in tight windows to win it? And if he
Yeah, and I
has
think
to,
that's exactly why Georgia hasn't won a playoff game is because he's a scrappy dude. He can pick up 2 yards on 3rd and 3 with his legs if you really need it, but at some point you need to make big time throws with your arm to win a national championship, and that's I think why they haven't been winning playoff games.
and now the last thing on him, I also think because he will 3rd and 2, he'll get three, and he will get smoked by 12 defenders,
Yeah, he has
and
been banged up.
he'll have to do that for 12 games.
Yeah,
And I mean, that's what he had to do last year. And so when you get to the playoff where it is a war of attrition, he's not as super downy, Charmin fresh as he was the first week of September. And that's another reason I'm kind of not sold on Georgia's because Gunner Stockton's going to he's going to be peeing blood by Halloween.
yeah, you're not wrong. And while we're on the topic of the SEC, can kind of go right into my second hot take, and that's that I don't think Texas is going to even make the college football playoff. They're a bona fide preseason top 5 team. They have one of the 3 best odds to win the national championship, but I think they're going to be an 8-4 or 9-3 team. The fact is, their defense last year, one of that big bad defense they had, gave up 28 points or more in 5 games. They fired their defensive coordinator and bring in Will Muschamp, which I would have been more excited about maybe 10 years ago. I don't know how good of a defensive coordinator he is anymore. Obviously, they have Colin Simmons on that defensive line, but the fact is he really didn't show up in their biggest games, and their defensive line really lacks depth behind them. Their secondary is almost entirely new. Their offensive line replaces 3 starters. They brought in that guy Cam Coleman, the Auburn wide receiver, who Ohio State really wanted, and he's great. He's probably one of the 5 best receivers in the country, but I'm really uncertain about all of their offensive skill position players outside of Cam Coleman. And then obviously we've already talked about Arch Manning. He's definitely going to improve from last year. He's definitely going to be an above average quarterback, but I think he's a far cry from the generational quarterback people are propping him up to be. And the schedule, I mean, that's the other thing. It's brutal. they have home games against Ohio State and Ole Miss, and road trips to Tennessee, LSU, and Texas A&M, and then their game against Oklahoma in the Red River rivalry. Not to mention the fact their inexplicable poor performances they had last year, like against Florida, which was a loss, and overtime wins against Kentucky and Mississippi State. None of those three teams finished with a winning record. So I wouldn't even be shocked if Texas loses a clunker of a game to a Florida or a Missouri this year. So I just like they probably still have a top 10 roster in college football. I don't think this is an elite roster. I don't think they have an elite quarterback. I talked a couple episodes about how I think Steve Sarkisian is a little bit of an overrated head coach. I just think this is a really good team with a really hard schedule and impossible expectations to meet. So I think they are an 8-4 or 9-3 team this year, and they will miss the playoff again.
That is hot. Um, I'm looking at their schedule myself. I could see them losing to Ohio State and then running the table the rest of the way. That wouldn't shock me.
I think that's the
Um,
the thing with the SEC is like we're talking about, Texas, Ole Miss, Tennessee, LSU, A&M, Oklahoma. Like I Texas, like you said, they could run the table against all those teams, but I think they could also just as easily go winless against all those teams. That's the parity of the SEC. It's their strength, but it's also their weakness. They got a lot of good teams, but none of those teams I think are gonna really rise to the top. And I think that's my point. Outside of Georgia, I think Ole Miss is the only team I can point to where I'm like they have the pieces that I can see this coming together. I can see him going on a run, potentially winning the SEC and making a run in the playoff. Everyone else is just pretty good rosters with question marks abound.
yeah, and then, well, I'll give you my hot take then. I think the school in Texas that ain't making the playoff is Texas A&M.
I mean, I'd
I
agree with
just
you. I don't think either of those teams are making the playoff. I think Texas A&M was wildly overrated last year and were propped up by a really easy schedule.
yeah, I think they're gonna have a hard time of making it this year. They have a lot of holes to fill. Elko seems like a good dude and a good coach. But this is a program that just doesn't have a history of of really doing it. And somebody said to me, I have a friend, a banker friend of mine that's an Auburn fan, and he said to me a few years ago, we're I look, it was one of those years where they're hyped and it's fairly recent. It's within the last 5 years. And he's like, yeah, I hate this. Every year when we're hyped, we stink. We finish under 500 and we're great when people don't think we're going to be great. And I'm like, hmm. And to me, that's A&M
Oh,
too.
I thought for a second he was talking about A&M because that's spot on. Auburn always sucks. I don't know what he's talking about.
But and I look at A&M's schedule, it's not brutal, but because again, we're talking about teams like Arkansas, Missouri, you know what? That banger weekend everybody's talking about, October 17th, all those great games this weekend. Here's the best one. Texas A&M against the Citadel. Smoking hot game. Let's watch that one, folks. Um, and they play Alabama, South Carolina, Tennessee, Oklahoma, Texas. Um, could they go 12-0 with that schedule? Yeah, they could. I think they play Arizona State in the battle of the teams with ugly ass uniforms the same weekend that Ohio State plays Texas. And frankly, they lose that one in the battle of the teams with the ugly ass uniforms. It's going to be a long season. And
Yeah.
that's the type of game they lose. They're likely to come into Texas limping and whatever, needing to win to make the playoff and blow them out 73-3. That's what they'll do. And then you'll wonder, well, how did they lose to Arizona State or Kentucky or, blow that game on a missed field goal against LSU or something like that? That's A&M. And I think they've recruited really well. I think they have the best recruiting class in the country right now. We're up there and good for them.
Yeah. And I don't personally really believe in Marcel Reed, their quarterback. He's just a little too inconsistent, too small. Tries to be a dual threat, but isn't actually that big of a game changer on the ground. I don't believe in him. And like I said, I just think they were propped up with a ridiculously easy schedule, which newsflash, folks, can happen in the SEC too. It's all about hitting the schedule lottery. Um,
Right. And they do. I think the big loss for them is I'm not gonna the kid the Browns drafted in the first round, the wide receiver. That guy was such
yeah, Concepcion.
throw him the ball 2 yards and then just watch him, zip, 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 and he's gone. How many plays? That comeback against South Carolina, how many catches like that
Yeah,
Concepcion have? It was like he had a career in the second half against the Gamecocks, and most of it was short routes that he just made the corner miss, and then he's gone. Catch me if you can. Leonardo
yeah,
DiCaprio down the sideline. So
yeah. I
that's my
think
hot take.
cool. No, don't hate that at all. I think we can probably move off the SEC. Before we do, I guess this isn't one of my four hot takes, but the more I think about it, I'm going to say Oklahoma makes the playoff. I think those are my three SEC teams: Georgia, Ole Miss, and Oklahoma. But we can get more into that when we actually
Well,
reveal.
you actually, that's a good hot take. I'll consider that my second hot take. I think it depends on what that defense is like and how, if Mateer, you made it in the cornerback show, you called out Mateer, talked about his hand and how badly hurt he was. Cause I mean, for 5 games last year, he,
He was the Heisman
you,
favorite by a
he would,
wide margin.
right. And you had to give it to him. And then he was hurt for the Texas game, and Arch Friedenhofer finally had a good game in the spotlight, and Texas won that, and you just wondered where is this Mateer fella, and it turned out he had a broken hand, and it's hard to throw the ball with a broken hand.
Yeah,
So if he's as good for 12 games as he was for the first five, then yeah, Oklahoma's in, because I think the defense, Venables has proven
it's gotten better
he
every single year with him there. The defense.
and, and that yeah, the defense can ball. Just ask Alabama. They've had a hard time with him two
Yeah,
years in a row. So, and didn't score a touchdown 2 years ago. He can coach defense. So anyway,
yeah,
yeah, I think
no
I
doubt.
think I think Oklahoma has got a case to be made. Indiana, someone just decided, oh, we want to give Kurt Signetti another chip this year. Well, they rank the defending champions number 6. That's just preposterous. Come on.
Yeah.
I mean, come on. They're defending champs.
Yeah, I'm
There's
always of the opinion the defending champion should just start the next season number one, regardless of what they lost. It just makes the most sense. So my third hot take I had is actually going to take us over to the Big 12 real quick. My hot take there is that they're going to get two teams in. I think Texas Tech and BYU will both make it. The two teams have dominated the Big 12 the past two seasons. BYU is 15-3 in conference. Texas Tech is 14-4. I don't think it's a hot take to say Texas Tech has the most talented roster in the Big 12. They have a manageable schedule. Their toughest games are all at home. That's Houston, Arizona State, Arizona, and TCU. Even with Sorsby gone, I like their chances to win 11 or 12 games. And then BYU, with Kalani Sitake just continues to be disrespected while doing nothing but winning over the past 5 years. Outside of a road trip that they have into Utah in November, which could be a barn burner of a game, their toughest games are also all at home: Iowa State, Arizona, and Notre Dame. That Notre Dame at BYU game in October could be a lot of fun because there's a really good chance both teams are undefeated. Bear Bachmeier returns at quarterback after winning Big 12 Freshman of the Year. And BYU is among the leaders in college football in returning production. And we talked about it. I think the SEC is going to have even more parity than last year. Going to have a lot of 7-5, 8-4, 9-3 teams. I think the Big Ten behind the Big Three could really eat each other up. I wouldn't be shocked if the Big Ten only gets three teams into the playoff again. And I don't see the ACC getting more than one team in. So I think there is going to be room for two Big 12 teams. And I think as long as BYU and Texas Tech go into their title game no worse than 11-1, I think there'll be plenty of room for the loser of that game to still get in. So yeah, I have Texas Tech and BYU in the playoff.
Texas Tech is in. I mean, they're too good. I have no reason to hate them other than I don't like the big booster there, and I didn't like the Brendan Sorsby thing. Thought that was, we all know, we devoted better part of 2 episodes to that fiasco and their justification for it. But there's no way Texas Tech is not making it, and frankly, the SEC is becoming the Big 12. There is nobody that's just stinks in the Big 12. Not one team. That's the
Yeah,
SEC.
Cincinnati kind of does, but yeah, you're right. I mean, you want to talk about depth of a conference. The Big 12 is as deep as it gets. That's why the Big 12 is always so much fun to watch.
Right. That, and sometimes they play defense and sometimes they don't. And I wouldn't be surprised just I absolutely see BYU getting in there because that October 17th weekend is going to be a historically great weekend for college football watching. And yeah, I'm down with BYU. I just think if you look at it, how does the SEC get more than four teams in? I actually think the SEC is kind of stuck at three. The Big Ten's kind of stuck at three. The Big 12 gets two in. That's eight. The ACC gets probably Miami because I think Miami will be back there. You're at nine. And then we say this
Notre
every
Dame
year.
and the
Oh,
Group of Five
Notre
team
Dame. Notre Dame.
gets you 10 and 11. So there is one more spot open for either a fourth Big Ten team, fourth SEC team, or a second ACC team.
Yeah, there you
Yeah,
go. Because and so that to me, SEC fans, if they're listening, don't have your expectations set that you're going to get five teams in this
that's
year.
absurd. No conference. I don't care if like God Himself comes back to Earth and creates the perfect conference. If you finish fifth in your conference, you're not fit to win a national championship. That's just period.
Well,
End
that
of statement.
this is what we've said. You and I before we had a podcast said, I think you and I felt like eight was the right number because once you get past the top eight, you're just throwing, you're Ted Lasso throwing darts at a
Well, this
dartboard.
is, but if you look at the 21st century of college football, you go year by year. Outside of 2007, which was famously the most chaotic season of college football of all time, and then 2024, where Ohio State, by far the most talented team in college football, stubbed their toe a couple times, and then finally got their shit together. Outside of those two seasons, you can go year by year. There's never more than four teams that you can point to and be like, yeah, that was a national championship team. And that's like it's every year, and more often than not, it's only one or two teams that the entire season you're like, yeah, these are the two best teams. You can go back. We should do that one episode, go season by season, and talk about this because that's the state of college football. There are never 8, 10, 12 teams that are legit college football.
I could see it
Like
at eight.
national championship
I
contenders.
could see it at eight. It's a real stretch for 12. Yeah, we've had some good games from some of the lesser ranked teams, and they fixed some of the seedings from the early days of this 12-team tournament. I don't see it. I don't. I think we're going to be really like there are going to be some ugly, ugly, ugly people at the dance at wanting to get in, wanting to
Yeah,
get a dance with the homecoming king, I'd rather not let them in. We're going to have 12, and soon it's going to be 16, and soon it'll be 24, and it's just preposterous because you just
exactly.
don't,
And
you know.
if you really want to like sit down and think about it, like how many teams can actually win a national championship this year? It's six teams probably at most. It's just yeah, the whole if you're complaining about getting into the playoff when you are ranked 13th, 14th in the country, just shut up and win your games. We I
You
feel like we've
got you
said that a
got to
few
win.
times.
You got to
My
win.
I'll let's wrap this segment up. My last hot take is actually going to take us over to the ACC, and I guess it's not a hot take per se. All I'm going to say is watch out for Louisville. I'm not saying they're going to make the college football playoff, but it's definitely not out of the realm of possibility. Like you said, Jeff Brom, he's arguably the most underrated coach in college football. He's won 68% of his games over the past 5 seasons. That includes the final 2 years at Purdue. And if you want proof of how good of a coach he is, just look at what Purdue's done since he left. He brings in Lincoln Keenholz, who I think should be an upgrade after Miller Moss really struggled last year. Miller Moss had a big bowl game at the end of the 2023 season. I think it was when Caleb Williams sat out. He played Louisville, threw 6 touchdowns, had all this hype, started for USC in 2024, and really struggled. Ended up getting benched, transferred to Louisville last year, and never got his footing. So I think Lincoln Keenholz, even though he has 0 career starts, I think being around Ryan Day in the Ohio State program for 3 years, it made him a better quarterback, and I think he's going to be a step up. But the reason I'm saying no college football playoff is because they did lose a lot of production. They made up a lot of it in the transfer portal, but I think they may need to have some time to get their footing, and their schedule unfortunately does not really allow it. I already mentioned they play Ole Miss to open the season, and then they have SMU week 3, who still has Kevin Jennings at quarterback, is still one of the favorites to win the ACC. So if Louisville starts 3-0, I honestly think it's likelier than not that they make it to the college football playoff because their schedule the rest of the way is very favorable. They avoid Miami, Virginia Tech, and Clemson. I just don't know if they'll be able to start off 3-0. But if you told me that the ACC is getting 2 teams in the playoff this year, I'd say Virginia Tech and Louisville are more likely than Clemson.
100%. I don't even think that takes hot.
Well, I mean, not to us because we're intellectuals, but I guarantee if you go to a college football casual fan, they would tell you Clemson's the second best team in the ACC by a wide margin.
It is. Well, I think you called one out, SMU. And then I just mentioned a couple of other teams that I think are worth. I mean, I think Auburn's getting way too much hype. Let's just take them off the table. They were a hot mess last year. I know
Who
people
thinks
love.
Auburn's making the playoff?
I don't think anybody does, but I'm looking at others receiving votes in the poll, and they would be like 30th. And I'm just like, are you kidding me? Let's let them win
I
a
mean,
game
once you
against a
get to that
Division
point in
One
the
team.
poll, it's just always nameless SEC team instead of anyone from
Not
another
not not
conference.
entirely, but I will say I think TCU might be
Yeah, good call.
TCU might be interesting. And your boy James Franklin in Blacksburg. I mean, I think they could make some noise. I don't think they're going to be in the playoff. You could see it and you wouldn't be shocked, and you've called it. So that would could be your second ACC team or a third ACC team in. One team because of where we live that I would like to see. I think they're going to be interesting, and I think his season may rest on how they do, as well as I think the quarterback, how high he gets drafted, depends on how well they do. Is the Gamecocks? I could see them. They have some guys, really good players, and if the coach is competent, the quarterback is healthy, the defensive line can get after it, they could be interesting. And they have probably the best fans in the SEC. And I know that's saying something, but man, there hasn't been a lot in Columbia for a lot of a lot of years. And they show up, they sell out, they're loud, they're passionate. They may not stick around for 4 full quarters because the team's getting blown out, but they are there every weekend, and it's hard for an Alabama or a Georgia to go in there and just buy all the seats the way Ohio State can at Northwestern or Illinois, Wisconsin, or other places. Ohio State's going to get those seats. South Carolina's not giving them up. So I just want to see what they can do this year. Be interesting.
Yeah. And actually, I think that's a perfect segue into our next topic, where we're going to talk about some coaches on the hot seat. And I was going to start from the coaches who I think have the least hot seat to the most hot, but because you mentioned South Carolina, I'm going to start with Shane Beamer, who I rate his hot seat at a 9 out of 10. I think it's scorching, and he needs to see production this year to keep his job. So in order, what does he have to do to keep his job? In my opinion, it's hard with Shane Beamer because I think a lot of it will depend not necessarily on how many games he loses, but how he loses games because he has had some clunkers in the past where the offense doesn't show up or they blow a 31-point lead to Texas A&M like they did last year and he's dapping up his fans, hyping up the crowd like they already won. So that's the kind of nonsense that needs to stop. They don't have an easy schedule next year. They have road trips to Alabama, Oklahoma, Florida, and Clemson, and they host Tennessee, A&M, and Georgia. That's 6 or 7 games, depending what you think about Florida, that they might be an underdog in. Even so, I honestly think anything less than 8-4, and he's getting fired. 7-5 might give him one more year, but this is going to be a preseason top 25 team, depending on what poll you look at. And this is the third year with Lenora Sellers at quarterback, Nick Harbor at wide receiver, and Dylan Stewart at defensive end. And this is 2 straight years where you look at, top 10 quarterbacks, top 10 defensive ends in college football. Third straight year where they're going to have 3 guys on those lists. The fact is, Beamer is 33-30 in 5 seasons. He's finished above 500 in the regular season in only 2 of those seasons. And I don't think that South Carolina, you mentioned it, they have probably the best fans in college football. I don't think they're pounding their chest saying it's college football playoff or bust. We need to win 9 or 10 games or he's out of there. I think they have reasonable expectations, but it's been a lot of mediocrity from Shane Beamer despite higher expectations. I don't think that they'll have the patience to keep him around 6-6 or 7-5. So I say 8-4 is the record he has to hold. But like I said, I could see him going 9-3. But if those 3 games are a 31-point blown lead and another game where the offense doesn't show up, has 150 yards and 6 points, and then a third game where they dominate the other team, have 500 yards, but they turn the ball over and can't convert in the red zone, and they're just losing these games that they should win. That's also the kind of stuff that I don't think South Carolina will stand for anymore. So I say 8-4 is the worst he can go in order to keep his job. What do you think?
I think you said something there. The fans are very, I think, patient. They know what they've had, and your boy, you mentioned him, Muschamp in Austin, burn that place to the ground. He was not a good coach. He was like Sherman going through Columbia. Read your history, folks. History book, folks. You'll know what I mean. He incinerated that program. He left it worse than he found it. Beamer was picking up the ashes and put pieces back together. And I can't forget. I think it was the 24 season. I'm not one for the refs cost us games and sort of
Oh,
stuff.
the refs cost him that game against LSU. I know exactly what you're
LSU
talking about.
and Alabama. I've never seen refs affect a game, two games back to back with absolutely ridiculously bad calls. And it's almost like Shane Beamer and the good folks in Columbia pissed off the SEC somehow. And so I don't understand all the Shane Baber hate and angst, especially when like Bob Stoops was getting a lot of love for people at Kentucky. And I think that's a comp. So if he does go
I think
six
part
and
of it with
six,
Shane Beamer is the way he runs his mouth too. Like I
yeah,
remember last year in November, I mean, not necessarily about other teams. It's just like things that don't need to be said. Like it was in November last year, they were already like out of bowl eligibility, and I remember he's standing at the podium being like, "I do not see a scenario where we're not in the top 10 competing for a college football playoff this time next year." And it's just like, dude, you're in the middle of the season. No fan wants to hear that right now. It's just like read the room. And it's that and celebrating up 31-3 against Texas A&M at halftime,
he,
high-fiving the student section going crazy. Like you
yeah,
still have a half of football to play, dude. And that I put
that's
that blown
fair.
lead entirely on him.
That's fair. That's fair. Those histrionics, I don't like. That's not a good look for him. And just the whole, he did it with against Burt in the bowl game against Illinois.
Yep.
He
Yep.
had he and you know, um, I'm not picking a fight with Burt. I might make fun of his waistline if he came approaching
Yeah, he'll
me.
come and eat you.
I would he that, but I know if he tries to eat me, as long as I don't get within 6 feet of him, he can't catch me. He can't. He can't catch me. Now
So
he may
what's
have
your what do you
so
put some chips on the table. Do you think Shane Beamer's around in 2027 or not?
uh, yes, I do. Let me look at their schedule. They got Kent State, Towson, Mississippi State.
Okay, so easy 3-0 start, and then they have Alabama, right?
Yeah, then they have Alabama on the road in Tuscaloosa.
But then they have
Um,
Florida and Tennessee, so I think that can be a 5-1 start. But it's a tough road down the stretch into November, isn't it?
yeah, you got Oklahoma A&M. They get Arkansas, they get Georgia, and Clemson. Those
Yeah,
are
that's
four. I could
tough.
see them going 8-4 though, and 7-5. As long as they don't look, you're a good point. The visuals will matter some. If they get throttled in Tuscaloosa and get throttled by Tennessee and get walloped by A&M, no one's going to feel terribly good about them. I think he's around. If he goes 5-7, I think much like Kentucky did with Stoops, South Carolina will pull the plug on Beamer.
Here's how I see their
I
season
think
playing out. I think, like I said, they start off 5-1. I think they're probably going into November like ranked with no more than 2 losses. And you just listed off that stretch they had into November. I think one loss kind of implodes, and one loss turns into two, and I think they implode and just fall flat at the end of the season. And I just think there's going to be not enough positive things at the end of the season for him. And I think he'll ultimately get fired. So hey, a rare disagreement on the podcast. I honestly love to see it. But I think we can move. We have, like I said, I was going to start from least hot to most hot, but since we're already up talking about the coaches who really are on the hot seat, we can jump to the coach who probably has the hottest seat in the country. I don't think you have to spend too much time on him, but it's Mike Norvell at Florida State. And I think what he has to do to keep his job for me is pretty tough to nail down because I really don't know what Florida State's expectations are right now. I feel like my gut tells me 8-4 is the worst he can do to keep his job because I know a lot of the fan base wanted him gone like 2 years ago at this point. But also, last year's coaching cycle proved it's especially hard to pull coaches away from jobs they feel secure at. And so, if they manage to go 8-4, that's a tremendous step forward from the shit show they've had the past 2 seasons. So I wouldn't be shocked if Florida State is like, okay, we're going back in the right direction. Let's not blow this up right now because we don't even know what coach would want to come to Florida State. So that's kind of the bar I think he has to get to. Which honestly, based off of how they've played the past 2 seasons, is a tough bar to get to. What do you think they have to do to, or what do you think Norvell has to do to keep his job?
I think he's Sean Penn and Dead Man Walking. And the unfortunate thing for him is he doesn't have Susan Sarandon to give him comfort and pray for him.
That was a
I
good one.
I just don't I don't see it. I think he has you asked me one question. I think you're absolutely right. 8-4 is the bare minimum. Anything less, 7-5, I think the board of trustees are going to be like, we're done
Yeah,
here.
we've given
We're
you too
done.
many chances.
We
And
get,
you and I kind of, make jokes about the ACC, but for an ACC schedule, Florida State's kind of got a gauntlet. They have all before November, mind you. They have SMU at home, at Alabama, Virginia at home, which has been a really underrated ACC team, and then road trips to Louisville, Miami, and then back home against Clemson. That's 6 games they might be underdogs in before November. So I think you're right. He's a dead man walking. I think they're lucky if they win 2 of those games. I think they fire him, and Tom Herman is their interim coach for the
you
month of
you
November.
you called it. Herman's their coach. He's not only is he an interim coach, he's going to be their coach in 27. That's my prediction. You asked me that about Beamer. Is he back? He ain't back in 27.
Mike
He's
Norvell,
not.
that is.
He's gone.
Yeah,
He's
I
gone
think
in 27.
I think you and I are with the majority in thinking that.
You didn't mention this coach who I think secretly is on the hottest of hot seats, and you called him out earlier by mentioning who he brought in as his defensive coordinator. Is I think Sarkisian is wearing asbestos pants this year because
Wow.
if they don't think about it,
So you're
that
like you're
team
saying if I'm right and they go 8-4 this year, do you think there's
he's
a chance
gone.
he gets
He's
fired?
gone. Yes,
Wow.
he's gone. He's gone. And I think Texas fans have a very short memory. They forget what that program was. Texas is always back, baby. Texas is always back. They like their cigars with $50 bills on the sidelines just to prove that Texas is back. They got Matthew McConaughey playing the bongos. You know, they've got it all. They're always back. They're going to forget how poor they fell after Mac Brown left, how irrelevant they became, and how average. I mean, Tom Herman was a good coach. He just never could get them past 9-3, and I think they're going to fire him for that. I don't think the final four appearances they're going to be recede into memory like a wave. That's
That's a hot take if I've ever heard one. And
I,
I think those are good
eh,
points. I don't disagree.
if it plays if you're right that they don't make the playoff, he's done. He's
All
done.
right. That's why that's something no one is talking about because if you listen across the country, Texas is like a shoe in to make the playoff. So yeah, this is insight you get nowhere else, folks. Um,
Nowhere. Go look for it, but you can't find it.
exactly. So you know what? That's enough SEC talk for one day. I want to get back to the Big Ten, our roots, because I got 4 coaches in the Big Ten who I think whose seats are starting to warm up. Now I'll start with the coaches that I think have the coolest seat, and the first one would be Matt Rhule at Nebraska. I give his hot seat a 3 out of 10. I think as long as he gets him back to a bowl game, like as long as this season doesn't implode and they go like 4-8, he's getting another season. Like I think Nebraska, obviously they've if South Carolina doesn't have the best fan base in college football, I think Nebraska does. And obviously, they want to get into college football playoff contention. They want to get back to where they were in the 90s. But I think this school is also realistic. I don't think they booting out a coach who has gotten them back to being relevant and is as good and as experienced of a coach as they can bring in right now. I think they realize booting him right now would be a bad idea. And I think Nebraska fans are comfortable going 7-5 or 8-4 for a few more years rather than taking a big swing on a head coach that, if they miss, they might tumble back to the bottom of the Big Ten. So I think that as long as he gets back to a bowl game, that he's safe. But if he does go like 6-6 this season, that is going to make 2027 the money season, and it's going to be time to put up or shut up, show that you have us go in the right direction, or maybe it will be time to move on. So I
See,
think that's the bar he has to get to. But if it implodes and he goes 4-8, I do think he's
well,
fired.
and if he's 4-8, anything less than 6-6, he's done. And I think 6-6, he's done.
Really, you think they would be that impatient?
Yeah, I don't think that's impatient anymore. He's going to be what, in year 5, and he goes six and
Year
six.
4, yeah.
All right, and you haven't. What were they last year? 6-6.
They went 7-5, and yeah, 7-6, I guess.
Yes, you didn't improve. I mean, it's 2 years, and more importantly, and you can't really hold this against him, but you and I would if the same thing happened to Ryan Day. You lost the prized quarterback, who I still think is going to be a great NFL quarterback in Dylan Raiola.
Hmm.
And that may be addition by subtraction there in Lincoln, because there is something with that Raiola family. I don't know what it is, but there is some LaMelo Ball kind of, or whatever the father's name is, running through that family. The way they just switch programs, the way some people switch underwears or change their cleats, and you go to Oregon to be a backup, which a
Yeah,
good.
and Nebraska fans were not happy with how he was talking about. I mean, he didn't say anything too crazy. He was talking about how Oregon's more talented and he's happy to be somewhere with scenery rather than cornfields. But Nebraska fans really,
Yeah,
really hate
say,
him. But I'll
I would like to see Nebraska get good enough
right,
that if
yeah.
they were to play Oregon, that game's meaningful, and they can have him eat some corn, as it
But
were.
here's what I think the key will be for Matt Rhule as to, how either whether or not he gets fired or how hot his seat is heading into 2027. Matt Rhule in his 3 years at Nebraska, he's 9-5 in September, 7-3 in October, 2-10 in November. And their November schedule this year is Illinois, Rutgers, Ohio State, and Iowa. No one's going to expect them to beat Ohio State, but I think anything less than 3-1 in November is real, no matter what record they finish with. I don't care if they're undefeated going into November. If they go less than 3-1 in November with that schedule, I think the heat is going to be on for 2027. So I think that's going to be the key for Matt Rhule's success is what does he do in November?
Because I'm just saying, he goes less than 6-6, and he's done. They're changing coaches.
Yeah. No, I don't
I
disagree. I think we can. The second Big Ten coach I wanted to talk about is kind of in a similar boat. I have his hot seat rating at a 4 out of 10, so a little bit hotter, but still mostly safe. That's going to be Luke Fickell at Wisconsin. It's interesting here because I personally think that when he first came into Wisconsin, he overhauled the entire staff, changed their offensive and defensive philosophy. He said we're going to go to a 3-man front on defense, and we're going to run like an air raid sort of hybrid offense and run no huddle, which in no world is that something Wisconsin can maintain. And obviously, it went like that, and the injuries spit back in his face. And I think Wisconsin realized the error of his ways. They realized that they are in no position to go fire a coach as experienced as Luke Fickell. They don't know who they're going to get. I think last year they said, okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to reduce your salary. We're going to give you an extension. You got 3 more years. And last year was year 1. And honestly, they played a lot better at the end of the season. So I think this year, again, it's part 2. I mean, it's technically Luke Fickell's second rebuild. So I think he's just got to get them back to a bowl game, show that he's got this on the right course. 2027 is going to be the prove it year. And I think as long as he gets the 6 wins, he's safe. I think Wisconsin is a smart administration who isn't going to do something rash. But if he can't get this team back to 6 wins, that's going to be what, 4-5 years of coaching at Wisconsin with literally zero to prove for it. So I think this one for me is cut and dry. Get to 6 wins, you're safe for 2027. The second version of the rebuild is on schedule, and if you don't get to a bowl game, you're fired. That's it.
say for the same thing holds true for him that holds true what you said for Beamer. If their 6 wins are abject disasters, he's done.
6 losses, you mean?
Yeah, if it would be 6 losses. If his 6 losses, they look completely inept, he's gone. If they finish 6-6, but they are a scrappy, you know, moral victory 6-6, he's back.
Mm-hmm. But
People go
also,
get
like the more I look at their schedule, maybe the bar might have to be a little bit higher than 6-6 because obviously they open with Notre Dame. No one's going to expect them to win that game. But then they have two non-conference cupcakes, and they have games against Michigan State, UCLA, Rutgers, Maryland, Purdue, and Minnesota. That those games with the two non-conference cupcakes, that's 8 winnable games. Like talk about hitting the schedule lottery in the Big Ten. I'm not expecting them to go 8-0 in those games, but like those, if you got those games on the schedule, like yeah, you better win 6 of them
yeah.
if you're Wisconsin.
I actually think if Wisconsin's any good, that Notre Dame game could be the
Don't sleep
upset
on
of
it.
the
Don't sleep on it.
year.
Yeah, and
I don't.
I
I never put cash on games. I never do because I'm for a lot of reasons. But and I don't know what the line is. But I think it's probably going to be multiple scores in Notre Dame's favor. I'd take Wisconsin on the points. Meaning, I think that's what I mean. The I
yeah
was
yeah you're
the
right.
so I would do it. I right now, and I don't even know what the line is.
Well,
I
we
think
could
that
talk about that more when we start getting close enough to the season, then preview week one. And I will say, I talked about their new quarterback, Colton Joseph, who they got from Old Dominion, who's like a legit dual threat. And like,
he's
he
good.
ran for
He's good. He's
and I think back to Luke Fickell's Cincinnati teams when they had Desmond Ritter
there.
at his
You
days in
go.
Cincinnati. And Desmond Ritter was like he low key a dual threat. He could make plays with his legs. I think he ran for over 500 yards, and I think this is the first time he has a quarterback that can kind of affect the game with his legs. So I'm we're sitting here. I'm kind of talking myself into Wisconsin being maybe an 8-9 win team this year.
Well, I think the thing about people don't realize how good Old Dominion was last year. Beat Virginia Tech. They beat Liberty. They gave Indiana their best game till Indiana played Iowa and Penn State and Ohio State.
Right. Yeah.
27-14. I knew there was a game. I couldn't remember what one it was, and it was Indiana. I mean, they're not going to win the SEC or the Big Ten, but that dude Colton Joseph had a stellar season last year, and he played well against Indiana. Think about it. Let that sink in. So now he's going to a play. Fickell is not an idiot coach. He's had some bad luck and what you said. He thought he was Rich Rod. He could go there, go to Madison and run an offense. It's just the personnel was ill suited for. But also in his defense, this is a shocking number. I don't know if you knew this. When Fickell got there, you know what their NIL budget was?
A nickel.
It's close. $4 million. This is the season that Ohio State, everybody's shamed for spending 20. They spent 4. They were in the bottom 4 in the Big Ten on NIL money. They've changed that. They're never going to be at the top. They don't have Phil Knight. They don't have the guy in Maryland who founded Under Armour. They don't have that kind of coin. But they've realized we can't spend $4 million and expect our football coach to win games. Not in a state where the state of Wisconsin probably produces 12 Division I players a year. It'd be one thing if they were in Florida and they're just growing on trees and saying, "Oh, we'll recruit better next year." They've improved their NIL game, and if Colton Joseph stays upright, I think Fickell's back. You didn't ask me this. He's back in 27.
Yeah, no,
That's
I
the
agree with that schedule they have, and I'm gonna have to take a closer look at their roster because now I'm starting to think, if I like what I see, they could be a dark horse top 25 team. But yeah, I undoubtedly think Luke Fickell is going to be back as well.
He's our
Last two
guy,
coaches
man.
here.
He's our guy. Your mom loves him. She got his autograph. Come on. We love
Yeah,
Luke. Can't
last two
root against
coaches
him.
here. We're gonna head out west. Lincoln Riley at USC. I have his hot seat at a 5 out of 10. Expectations are undoubtedly higher this season than they've been since Caleb Williams was there. I don't think he has to make the college football playoff to keep his job, but I kind of feel like he has to have some sort of signature win this year that he hasn't had at USC. I think they should easily start at 4-0, but they have Oregon, Washington, and Penn State before their bye week. Those are three really tough games, and then they have Ohio State and Indiana to start November. So I look at Oregon, Penn State, Ohio State, and Indiana. I really think he's got to beat at least one of those four teams in order to keep his job. And if we were going to put a record on it, I think this is kind of the magic number because we've said this a lot about a lot of coaches, but I think 8-4 is the worst he can go. without losing his job. Think that's kind of the floor. 9-3 is the goal, and if he's 10-2, all of a sudden you're going to see Lincoln Riley back in one of those best head coaches in college football lists.
I agree. 8-4, anything less than 8-4, he's done. He's done.
Yeah. Honestly, though, if like the thing with USC though that I don't think a lot of people realize is they don't have rabid fans like a lot of the other big programs. Like even when they're really good, like they've been struggling the past 10 years to sell out their stadium. Like
No,
so if they
no,
go 7 and
no.
5, if the administration decides they don't want to put in a bunch of money for a buyout and conduct a search, I don't think there's going to be a bunch of fans outside the stadium like rioting and calling for his job. I just don't think that's the fan base they have.
No, but it's a lot of alumni and a lot of wealthy alumni and a lot of alumni that give a lot of money. That's who will want him gone. And you brought this point up. About Lincoln Riley is people forget how bad USC was before he got there. That is true. I saw a little snippet come across my socials about Urban Meyer saying, how is USC not in a 10 or 11 win team every year? So I don't know if he's got it out for Lincoln Riley, but there is something to be said for that. I mean, that helmet, the Trojan horse, the fight song, the band, the cheerleaders, they have a brand. I mean, and sex sells. And if you're 16 years old and you're watching USC and you're looking at those cheerleaders, you're like, I'm going there. I'm going to hang out with Snoop and Will Ferrell, and life is going to be good. And I'm going to go streaking every Thursday night. I mean, it's
By the
just,
quad.
yeah, exactly. So,
I personally like. I hear USC being mentioned a lot as like a dark horse college football playoff team. I don't know if you know this. They are the youngest team in college football. I've talked about Jaden Mayava. I think he's a really serviceable quarterback, but I don't think he's a significant difference maker that can make up for some of this youth that they have. And I have a hard time seeing them in the playoffs. So I do think he sticks around, but I have a really hard time seeing him top
interesting,
eight or
because I,
nine
I,
games.
I had heard Ohio State age wise was the youngest team in college football.
Ohio State's number 2 actually, behind second youngest team behind USC.
Second youngest team, and I also know Alabama's very young.
Yeah.
Interesting. I did not know they were the youngest. Eight less than 8-4. He's done. He's not back in 27.
So what do you think? Do you think he's the coach in 2027? I'm a yes.
I'm a yes too because I think he'll get 8-4.
Okay.
I think he might be able to beat Oregon. He might, that team, they're going to be 1, 2, 3, 4. They'll be 4 and they should beat Rutgers. Sorry, all of you RU fans, they should beat Rutgers. So, but that's a tough. They go to Piscataway and then they got to turn around and come back and play Oregon at home. But that's the type of
Oh,
game.
definition of trap game right there. I'm gonna have to take a note for when we get to that week because that might be an upset special.
Yeah, that's the type of game Lincoln Riley got, and Dan Lanning might do a locker room speech and wink at the camera and somehow USC will get their hands on it and be all fired up. That's the type of game Lincoln Riley will pull out all the stops and coach like there's no tomorrow. That's going to be a dogfight. We know that right now.
Yeah.
And that's
Great,
the type
but
of
we're
game.
both we're both aligned that Lincoln Riley
Yep.
will return. So let's move on to our last coach, and that's going to be Mike Locksley at Maryland. I have his hot seat rating at 6 out of 10. And I was shocked. I was looking at what he's done at Maryland. I can't believe he's walking into his 9th season as Maryland's
Yeah,
head coach. And
he's
for a
been there a
while, I
while.
mean, he was a trending head coach for a long time. He improved every single year there for a while, culminating in back-to-back 8-win seasons in 2022 and 2023. And he brought Maryland to 3 straight winning seasons for the first time since 2001 to 2003. So after the 2003 season, Mike Locksley was on his way to becoming one of maybe the best head coach in Maryland football history. But since then, he has 2 straight 4-8 seasons. And listen, Maryland isn't a hotbed. Even in those good 8-4 seasons, they struggled to fill their stadium. I don't think they have crazy expectations for him, but I think he has to get them back to a bowl game or else he's gone. 3 straight losing seasons after 3 straight winning seasons, especially with the way the sport is changing so rapidly, that's just hard to defend. So for me, this is pretty simple. He has to get them to 6 wins, back to a bowl game to keep his job. Otherwise, he's out. What do you think?
I'm surprised their NIL game is so good, but they do have the guy who founded Under Armour. They should be East Coast Oregon. They should be. They have that kind of money. And I look at their schedule again. There's like 4 or 5 games they've got to go 3-2 or 4-1, and they're good.
Yeah, I mean,
They
they play, I
always
think, UCLA, Nebraska, Rutgers, Illinois, Purdue, Wisconsin. I think those are 6 winnable games, not to mention their non-conference. And like they don't have the gauntlets out there. They close with USC and Penn State, but who knows if Maryland's all of a sudden like a 6-3, 7-2 team towards the end of the season, they're playing with momentum, or even if they're not, even if they're like hovering around 500, like they got this kid Malik Washington who we've talked at length about. If they're better than we think, they could be playing spoiler for USC or Penn State's
yes,
college football playoff
100%.
chances. And I don't think the talent gap is that drastic between
No,
Maryland and those teams.
the thing about Maryland is you said about Beamer and South Carolina about how they have the number one defensive end and the number one quarterback and the number one this and the number one that. Maryland always has athletes. I mean, they got that stud wide receiver. They have a quarterback that can throw the ball from College Park to Happy Valley, and he can catch it. He can catch his own pass. He's that fast. There is not pure talent. There's just something been missing. Like they get punched in the, they're the Kings of start September 4-0, finish 6-6. And they just haven't been able to get over the hump. Like a classic game for them. UCLA at the end of September. They better win that. They start against, they go to Nebraska at the beginning of October. They better win that because then they get Ohio State the next weekend. And they're
Yeah, I
going
think we'll
to
know pretty early what kind of team this Maryland team is. If it's a team that can really compete and pull off some of these wins, or a team that's just gonna, fall flat like they always do. So personally, I think that they're gonna get to the 6 win mark. I think Mike Locksley will be back, but if there's a Big Ten coach who will get fired before the end of the season, I think Mike Locksley would be the bet for that to happen.
it's him. You're right. You're right.
Yeah.
Unless barring any extracurriculars, easy for me to say. Anything that we don't know about, like holding a butter knife to your neck in your mistress's apartment, like we don't know about that stuff. But record performance on the field, if there's a coach that's going to be fired before the season is over, it is Locksley.
Yeah. So do you think he'll be back in 27 though?
No,
All right, another disagreement. I love when that happens. Um, Great. So I think we can move off of the hot seat conversation. And I have some news hit tidbits I wanted to touch on. But before we do that, I know Warde Manuel has been on your mind again, Dad.
the fat man. It's not Christmas, but the fat man in Ann Arbor just keeps giving me stuff. So I was looking at some stuff because one of my banker friends said, "Hey, go easy on that AD from Connecticut," and it dawned on me like Warde Manuel was the athletic director at UConn before he went to Ann Arbor, and then I'm like, "Oh my goodness!" So let me spin a little yarn for you, listeners. Great coach retires, legend of the program, wins 3 national championships. Who do you hire? You hire a friend of the program, of a family, a brother of the program, a favored son. Who does this sound like, Sean? You know who this sounds like. The NBA players sing his praise. Kevin Durant says he's great. He got me through hard times in Oklahoma City. He's a future superstar in the making. LeBron says good things about him. So what does fat man in stores do? He hires Kevin Ali. And it looks like a genius hire. A genius hire. Kevin Ali played for Jim Calhoun. Kevin Ali appears to be a great coach. He wins the national championship in basketball in 2014. Damn those old Warde Manuel bugaboos hit. So the parallels there, right? It's Juwan Howard. What happens to Kevin Ali? Lack of institutional control. Familiar phrase, right? 3-year probation for UConn. Ali's fired. can't coach anymore. His contract gets hung up in all kinds of legal limbo. I think they just settled the payout for that a few years ago. UConn was on probation, won a national championship, went on probation, 3 years probation, all because of a lack of institutional control. All kinds of practices and contacts and rules violations you can't have that a good AD with any kind of compliance department would have caught and would have made a call to Kevin to say, hey, Kevin, you can't do that today. Any good AD would have caught it. Now, that's bad enough. Your program was put on probation because you were an idiot. Okay. He hired Bob Diaco, perhaps the worst Division I football coach of the last 20 years, who incinerated, burned the ashes. I mean, he burned the program to the ground, then burned the ashes, then he burned the ashes, then he burned the incinerator, then burned the ashes. That's how bad he was. He hired Bob Diaco. You don't hear that name anymore. It's like, oh, he's a cracker jack defensive coordinator. You know why? Because I don't think he's working anywhere near a team that's any good. He's probably coaching his grandson's team somewhere, some peewee league. He hired those guys. Ann Arbor said, we want a Michigan man, and they got him. And
Yep.
and the past was so. This is a case. People will tell you the past is not indicative of the future performance. In this case, it was. What did you see in this fat man in stores that made you think he was a Michigan man?
I'm gonna go ahead and take a stab at it. I think he had a tight set of lips, if you know what I mean. Now that sounds like I was inferencing a blowjob. I meant he's not gonna talk about all the shit that Michigan has going on in the background.
You're gonna have to believe the holy hell out of what you just said. But yes, he exactly. That's could be the only redeeming quality, because if you look at his performance in UConn, it was objectively, not subjectively, awful. So everything Michigan's had, the $60 million and counting, this is on stupidity of the board of trustees hiring Warde Manuel as your AD.
Yeah, and it's Michigan wants to put all of this stuff on Warde Manuel, but well, you laid it out perfectly. Why'd you hire him in the first place?
You should never. The guy is garbage. He can't. He's a very bad manager. Awful. So that's enough. The fact. I mean, there's your Christmas in August, people. This dude just keeps giving me content. I love it. He's a horrible AD. Michigan should never have hired him. It's crazy.
Yeah, dear listeners out there, if any of you can't afford therapy, just start your own podcast. It does wonders. That was a joke. No need to laugh.
Preacher, preach, preach.
All right. Well, now that we got that done with, I have some just news and tidbits I wanted to hit. I'll run through them. If any of them strike with you, Dad, feel free to jump in and give your thoughts. I wanted to call out Peter Burns from ESPN. He's a no-name. I've never heard of him, but he tweeted out a tweet because the coaches preseason poll came out. He had a tweet that said 9 SEC schools play at least 5 of the top 25 teams in the coaches poll. Not a single Big Ten team plays 5. And it's, I don't know, you're probably not on Twitter, but they have this feature where it's community notes. So if people tweet out misinformation and, stuff like that, it corrects you and says, this is wrong. This is what's actually true. And Peter Burns got community noted because, in fact, 8 Big Ten teams play at least 5 top 25 teams from the coaches poll, including Ohio State and Michigan, who each play 6 preseason top 25 teams. I decided to call this out because usually what I hate about ESPN's SEC coverage and their bias is that they try to disguise opinions as facts, and this is just straight up lying. And also, beside the fact, it's just even if he was accurate in that, it's a dumb argument to be using preseason polls as a data point to argue conference strength. Preseason polls are dumb and they are inaccurate. So I just had to call that out because it was stupid.
You've said it all. I don't know the dude. That's a dumb tweet. I'm sitting here trying to figure out he's getting paid to do that at ESPN.
Yeah, and this is after their rounds of layoffs where they fired like personalities who had been with them for 2 decades. Clearly
I'm
laid off
willing.
the wrong people.
I'm willing to bet Peter Burns is probably just a not even a person. He's like a chatbot or something, and somebody's AI wasn't working. I'm being dead serious.
No, I would believe that. Um,
I don't
so
think he can't be that stupid. But anyway,
Yeah, so
go.
my only other news I wanted to go through, just because we have fall camps starting across the country this week. I have a bunch of updates for Ohio State. I wanted to throw out an update I read from USC's fall camp. They have this tight end, Mark Bauman. He's a true freshman. He's 6'4", 250. He was a 5-star recruit, consensus number 2 tight end in the 2026 class. I've been reading around on some Big Ten teams trying to see if there's anything that's come out of the first couple of days of practice, and apparently Mark Bowman, or I have to figure out how to say his name. He's been flashing at camp, and he's the name to know. He's lining up all over the field. He's getting Brock Bowers comps. Lincoln Riley has already talked about how he's pushing for a starting job week 1. And I talked about it on previous episodes. USC's receiving room is completely overhauled. I mentioned Tanook Hines last episode, I think it was, who had a good season for them last year, should take a big step forward as their top receiver. But outside of him, they really don't have very much experience, a lot of question marks. So, if you end up hearing about Mark Bowman later this season, you heard about him first here on the Father, Son, and the Holy Buckeye.
That's the type of chess piece that Lincoln Riley. You don't need to give him those kind of chess pieces. He's going to do some fun stuff with that cat.
Yeah. I mean,
So
18-year-old who's 6'4", 250.
yeah, so there you go. Good call out.
But Ohio State, on the day of this recording, Thursday, August 6th, we had our first day of fall camp. So I was doing my research, watching some videos, trying to see what I could pull, and I got a few updates for us in case you weren't too privy. First thing, apparently it was a rough day for Jermaine Matthews. I read that he was just getting picked apart all day. It's the first day of camp. Listen, who knows what he was doing over the weekend? So I'm not going to worry about it too much. We do have depth in the cornerback room, but I will say I wasn't like Jermaine Matthews had been my favorite Buckeye or damn near the past couple seasons. But I wasn't really impressed with him down the stretch of the season. He was the one who got beat by Charlie Becker on that third down deep shot against Indiana that clinched the game. I remember on Michigan's first possession when they had the ball inside the 10, he got cooked by Andrew Marsh on what should have been a touchdown on 3rd and goal, but Underwood, of course, didn't look his way. Didn't play particularly well against Miami, but a lot of players didn't. So I wasn't super high on him, and I just didn't love the fact that this is one of the first things I read when I was looking at reports of the fall camp. So who knows? Again, first day of camp, long way to go. He's, could still very well be our starter. But I will say, if this is a trend that continues, Dominic Kelly, I think the sophomore transfer from Georgia, would probably be the top candidate to step into his role if this is something that becomes a bigger problem.
Keep rolling, bro.
The offensive line, we finally got some insight there. Day 1 saw Ian Moore at left tackle, Luke Montgomery at left guard, Carson Hinsman at center, Seyerveld at right guard, and Philip Daniels at right tackle. So again, we still have a long way to go. I'm sure tomorrow we're going to see them shuffle the new positions, but I thought it was interesting. We kind of got our first look at how people are going to line up, and my initial assumption that Seyerveld would stay at left tackle might not end up holding true. But I will say, if Ian Moore takes a step forward and becomes the answer at left tackle and plays like the highly touted recruit he was, I think him at left tackle and Seyerveld going back to guard is the best version of this line. I am going to be curious to see, though, how Philip Daniels does at right tackle because, again, he struggled down in those last 2 games against Indiana and Miami more than any other offensive lineman. So if that's a struggle, I'd be interested to see maybe would Ian Moore or Seyerveld switch to right tackle, and then Padilla comes in at guard. So, again, long way to go, but we got some insight into our offensive line. Legend Bay is suspended for the first few days of fall camp for a violation of team rules, and I might be remembering this wrong. I'm pretty sure he got into some hot water back in the spring, and that's why he couldn't wear the number 2 in spring practice, which he's wearing now. So I don't know what this was that he did that got suspended, but based off of this and the fiasco that was his recruitment, it's starting to make me a little bit nervous.
I don't get too crazy about that. I think it's some ticky tacky stuff, and Ryan Day's laying the law. And he's going to be hard on him because he knows there's talent there. He's just like, this is the way it's going to be. You can't, you knew what you could and couldn't do, and you did some things you shouldn't do. I wouldn't get too concerned about that. And I think the offensive line, if Ian Moore, if they moving Cerebell to a guard position, I kind of like him. I do. He didn't have a great season last year, but I think he just likes to mash people. And I don't care where he plays, but if he's playing next to Philip Daniels, who I also think likes to mash people, he just needs to get a little bit better footwork going and more consistency. But those two guys on that side of the field, I think Cerebell is going to look at him and say, "Bro, come on, you got this." And I think that'll be a good combo over there. And if Ian Moore is going to play up to his ranking, his recruiting ranking, that offensive line is going to maul people.
I think Ian Moore is like the X factor in all of this. Is like if he's the answer at left tackle, I think this comes together really easily. But if he has question marks over there, that's where people are going to have to keep getting shuffled. Um, Ryan Day, he talked to the press as well. A couple things he said. He was really talking up Isaiah West in his offseason. He said he arguably had the best offseason out of any Buckeye. And he reminded me because I forgot that he had a really bad knee injury his senior year of high school. Like last year, theoretically, he might not even been 100%. So I know a lot of people are assuming that Bo Jackson is the lead back here, but I'm starting to think this could be a true 50-50 split. Isaiah West could even take the lead, and then I think Jacoby Jackson, that big Florida transfer, is going to be the short yardage back, like a CJ Donaldson. But it'll be fascinating to see the competition between Bo Jackson and Isaiah West, who ends up being on top week one.
I it's Bo. It's going to be. Just think Isaiah West. People forget he was really good, and his emergence forced Peoples to go to Happy Valley. So that is true. I'd like to see what we have in Turbo Rogers, although there are not a lot of carries for a four-string running back, and I think the kid from Florida is going to get some run. They're building depth. They're building for a 16 or 17 game season and counting on playing a lot of dudes and a lot at every position
Yeah,
until they
so I
get
think
down.
honestly, like the Bo Jackson Isaiah West competition, it might be negligent because it's going to be they'll play the hot hand, they'll keep each other healthy, and at the end of the season, it's going to be whoever's playing better.
Yeah. And
Ryan
in
Day
fact,
also go ahead.
yes, exactly. 100%. 100%. Good. Keep going.
Ryan Day also talked about the new 5-year eligibility rule. I thought it was interesting. He talked about red shirts really don't exist anymore because as of last week, players now have 5 years of eligibility. So he was saying that there's going to be freshmen pushing for real playing time early. And I love to hear this because I think Ryan Day has been infamous for kind of hiding the true freshmen and trying to preserve that red shirt year. And there's going to be no more sitting them down because you want to preserve that red shirt. So, like, I look at our schedule. We have Ball State, Kent State, Illinois, and Maryland in the first half of the season. I think all 4 of those games where true freshmen could get reps and get real reps. And I think that'll be invaluable later in the season if injuries pop up. We could see guys like Brock Boyd, have a real impact down the stretch. Another interesting tidbit: Jonathan Hankins was seen at practice. Big Hank, our former big defensive tackle from the early 2010s. He was shadowing Larry Johnson and has been on campus reportedly for the past few days. So there are rumors that he could be the next ex player to join the staff. I thought that was interesting.
I would love that. I love
Love
me,
Big
Big
Hank.
Hank. Love him.
Yeah.
Love him.
Um,
Go
and
back
then
to
my
that. Who caused that fumble with Devin Gardner? Big Hank.
oh yeah, he was. I mean, he had an underrated NFL career too. He's good. I mean,
Hey,
he's still looking his
everybody,
weight.
he only just retired after what, 13 years, 12 years? I mean,
Yeah.
you don't play that long in the NFL without being able to take care of your body, but you also have to have coaches that like you. Like there's a reason Jadeveon Clowney's still balling in the NFL because A, he's got talent, he takes care of his body and he's available, but people like him. I mean, I don't know what it is, but they like him. You don't get to run that long if you're an asshole. It just doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Unless
And
you're unless you're like, incredibly talented. But look, Antonio Brown, incredibly talented, asshole. Guess what happened? His career ended probably 5 years too soon because he's an asshole. Pac-Man Jones, incredibly talented. Career probably ended 5 years too soon. Why? Asshole. So Hankins is seen it all, done just about all of it. And if he wants to coach at Ohio State, I say bring it.
Yeah, I mean, Larry Johnson can stay coaching as long as he wants, but he's getting up there in age. So I think like spending a season or two shadowing him and becoming our next defensive line coach was sounds pretty good to me. But the last little bit of news out of Ohio State's first day of fall camp I saw was that Jeremiah, Brandon Inniss, and Devin McQuinn had the most reps with the first team. Again, first day of fall camp. I'm sure they're rotating a lot of guys, but was interested to see like Brandon Inniss. Of course, I expected him to be running with the ones. He's a senior. He's going to have that job until he loses it. But thought it was interesting that Devin McQuinn was the third guy in there. And if you forget exactly what he did, he's coming over from UTSA. He has 150 catches, 1,700 yards, and 16 touchdowns in his career. And I spent some time today actually watching some tape on Devin McQuinn. Real busy day at work. And he's actually like I was really impressed with him. He's really good after the catch, which is something that Cortez Hankton, our new wide receiver coach, has been talking about all offseason. That's really a priority of his. He's really good after the catch. He can play in the slot if he needs, but he can also play outside and stretch the defense because he's got real speed. So I'm excited about Devin McQuinn now, and I think if I had to bet, I'd say those are probably the three starters. But I do think that Chris Henry's going to find his way in there eventually.
So is Brock Boyd.
Yeah, definitely.
But McGuinn, first of all, they do. You're right. They're trying to improve Yak. I'm shocked by the numbers I've read about how poor Ohio State's yards after catch was last year. It's one of the worst in college football. Part of it is because when you have two guys in the wide receivers they had, just can say go downfield. Julian's going to get it to you. That's what they did. There wasn't a whole lot of yards after catch with that. They're not going to run a stiff as the third wide receiver. They have too many good ones. And I do think they're going to do the same thing. This right. You look at this offense from the last couple of years to this year, or 24 to 25, and actually any year Hartline's been there. What one of the things I'd be critical of, love the guy, but he didn't really play more than three wide receivers. He had a hard time playing four when Jameson Williamson was there. Um,
Yeah,
and
I mean the depth we have this year is, I mean, unmatched.
and
Really,
that
since
and
like going back to the Tressel era.
yeah, and Cortez has a history. I think that's one reason why Ryan Day got him. First of all, he comes from the only other school that is in contention for wide receiver U in LSU, but also because he has a history of running a lot of guys out there and just saying we're going to play the hot hand. There's no way Jeremiah Smith is coming off the field in a close game unless he needs a breather. But they want to have that. Like if they need to, and Chris Henry goes out there because he needs a breather, they don't want the defense thinking it's a run. They want to be able to say, "Oh golly, Chris Henry can go up and get it," and they're just as likely to throw it to him, a bomb to him, as they are Jeremiah. That's what they want teams thinking, and they're going to your point earlier, they're going to try to develop that early in this season, and they're going to run a lot more wide receivers out there, and hopefully they won't end up transferring next year to Notre Dame.
God, God willing. Yeah, I mean, it might be good for Jeremiah too, because I mean, I'd love nothing more than for him to go for 2,000 yards and win the Heisman. But, I'd rather him be 100% going into the playoff if it's between the two. So, depth is good. But that's all the updates I had. I think we can take it into the post game spread, unless you had any final thoughts you wanted to get off your chest.
Let's post game spread it, baby.
Sweet. So this is our segment where we talk about something we're enjoying in our life that we want to share with each other and our listeners. Dad, what have you been enjoying since we've last recorded?
Well, I'm gonna go with a show and a food item. The show is on Apple TV. It's called Sugar. Stars Colin Farrell. I can't talk too much about the plot because you'll start to give stuff away, but it's a noirish detective show set in LA, present day LA. It's in the second season. The last episode of the second season drops this Friday. If you haven't watched it and you want to be like my son Jake, start watching season one. He loves it. And if Jake likes something, or my other Sean podcast and compadre Sean likes it, means you should like it. That's all I'm going to say. Sugar, Apple TV. The last thing, Sean, food item. We went to Edmonds, the original, which used to be Edmonds O's, which is still one of my favorite restaurants in Charleston. With your aunt and one of her girlfriends was in town last week, and just the glory of fried chicken. You know, it. And I read some recipes in New York Times for fried chicken is like the perfect summer food. Frankly, you don't need it. Doesn't need to be summer to have fried chicken. It is one of the greatest things ever invented. Fried chicken. It's just and Edmonds Oast or Edmonds the original in Charlotte or Charleston probably has the best fried chicken in
Wow.
Charleston. So I
Better than
think it's
that gas
better.
station at Mayor stops at on our way to
Oh,
Charleston.
that place is phenomenal. Yeah, because I mean that place will always have a fondness in my heart because of the Thanksgiving Day miracle we had with a 13-piece chicken order turning into like a 33-piece chicken order, and paid for like it was as if it was 10 pieces. But yeah, it's better. It's better, I think, than Leon's. And Leon's is no slouch, but I think Edmonds Oast chicken is um it's out of here. But you fried chicken is one of those things. It's just
All fried chicken is good fried
yeah,
chicken.
right. You know, but I think of that
If
tailgate with
anyone's out
you.
there knows how to make bad fried chicken, I would love to try it just for
No,
the experience.
I don't want to be no, it's no, I don't
Well, I'll
want
try
to.
it and then I'll kill you.
Yes, there you go. As long as it doesn't repeat itself. You can't. It's so perfect a food. We can't allow that badness to enter the realm. We can't.
Yeah.
So fried chicken. There you go.
Great. Well, thank you for sharing. For mine, listen, if there's one thing in this world that gives me unbridled joy and makes me feel like a kid all over again, like Ohio State does, it's Spider-Man. And so I went to my bachelor party this past weekend. I had a red eye Thursday night, and that was the night that Spider-Man came out. And I could not go all weekend without seeing the new Spider-Man with Tom Holland, brand new day. So I went to the movies. I packed up before the movie, went to the movie, left right from the movies to the airport for my red eye. And I'm not going to bore people talking about this movie. I could have my own Spider-Man podcast because I love him so much. I had my own Spider-Man almanac when I was a kid. I'll say this is the best Tom Holland Spider-Man movie by a wide margin. I cried twice while watching it. I'm gonna go back this weekend and see it a second time. And I'll say the first two, Tobey Maguire Spider-Man, those are the two greatest superhero movies of all time, and nothing will ever hold a candle to it. But this Spider-Man was easily the third best live-action Spider-Man. It was the villain they had was a great surprise. They did the villain a lot of justice. It was great acting. And yeah, I mean, I can't say enough good things about it. So even if you're not a big superhero nerd, all you have to do is watch the previous Tom Holland Spider-Man to understand what's going on. Because I know the Marvel Cinematic Universe can get really complicated really fast. Don't have to worry about anything else. Watch the first three Tom Holland Spider-Man and you're set. And yeah, even if you don't aren't a big superhero guy, it's a great film that has a lot of its core message is about how you can't do this life by yourself. Isolating is bad. You need friends. You need family, and that's what it's all about. And it's a beautiful message, a beautiful movie, and I can't wait to go back and watch it a second time.
Amen. Preach, Spidey, preach.
Beautiful. Well, I think that'll do it for our 10th episode. I don't know if you realize that, Dad. 10th
Wow.
episode of the Father.
Momentous.
Yeah, look at us.
Momentous.
We're making moves. Any parting words for our listeners today?
People, turn signals, use them, and just don't be a dick.
Yeah.
That's it.
Like clockwork. Beautiful.
All right, man.
Well, thank you, anyone and everyone that's out there listening. This was a lot of fun. And I think, we are, 4 weeks away from the season. So we got some catching up to do. We got some college football and Ohio State previews to get done. So you will catch us here very soon. Dad, it's been a lot of fun today.
Yeah, I love you, Sean. Take care. Have a good Thursday. Give my best to Autumn, and we'll do this again in a few days.
Sounds good. Yeah, thank you all for listening. Stay safe, and we'll catch you here next time.